Minister of Jal Shakti, Minister of State for Jal Shakti, Honorable Chair, dignitaries on the dais and dignitaries off the dais, ladies and gentlemen. I stand in front of you to talk about the impact of climate change on ecology, and I'm really privileged to have this opportunity to speak to you. And I must also say, sir, that the previous speakers have actually covered this subject already. So I'd like to kind of take you through my presentation, and wherever it is possible, I'll try to rush as well. Just to talk about climate change, we all understand this climate change is basically long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. So we are all aware of that, and it is happening basically because of the greenhouse gas emissions that we have been having, especially in the last around 1.5 centuries in the industrialized, during the phase of industrialization. And what is important is that the greenhouse gases have led to rise in temperature, which has various consequences, which we are discussing today over here. And talking about that, there is a limit to the temperature rise that has been kind of prescribed or mentioned by the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and also the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, where they estimate that we should really keep the temperature rise to 2 degrees centigrade from the pre-industrialized levels, and preferably to 1.5 degrees centigrade. And I must share with you that by now we have already had 1.1 degree rise in temperature since the industrialized phase that we have had. So that leaves us with a limited carbon budget, and due to various anthropogenic activities we are having, there is this limitation on carbon budget, and all of us internationally are trying to come together through under the UNFCCC platform to see how we can really ensure that the emissions are controlled. I would the graph just below, if I can mention about that, this shows the trend of the emissions from 1990 onwards till 2019. And as can be seen, even though we have all come together to kind of mitigate the climate change, to ensure that there is lesser emission, but yes, we are having a rising trend. So that's why the problems associated with climate change are going to continue to haunt us for some time. Next. Talking about the impact of climate change, most of the previous speakers have already talked about it. The most important is definitely the temperature rise, and I mentioned about it. Then this leads to variation in precipitation. It's not about the precipitation that we are having. There is, if we look at absolute terms, maybe during the year we receive the same rainfall, but it is about the timing of the precipitation that really creates a problem, and then also the amount of the precipitation that one receives at time. The example from Tamil Nadu kind of exemplified that. This also leads to sea level rise, which is also related to the melting of glaciers and melting of the polar regions. And then shrinking glaciers, that is the extreme weather events associated with this, which are in form of cyclones, which are in form of heat waves, etc. And then this has an impact on declining biodiversity. As I mentioned, it is mainly because of human activity that we are talking of. There are, of course, natural reasons also which can lead to temperature rise and climate change. But then we are talking of in terms of anthropogenic activities. Next, please. Impact of climate change on various water resources. Since we are talking about the water resilient infrastructure, we are in that theme. We are having decline in glaciers. In fact, I can skip this slide. We have already kind of looked at all of these impacts. These impacts, one has to really take into account that they are very, very important when we are looking at the most vulnerable areas. So it becomes important when we have these impacts in the regions which are drought prone, which are flood prone, coastal regions, regions which have deficient rainfall, where we have also water quality being affected, and snow-fed river basins, and areas with overexploited critical, semi-critical groundwater development. So in these areas, the impact is felt much more. We go to the next slide. And talking of some sectors, I've just mentioned here 2 sectors, although there are other sectors which would also have the impact. But then the most important sector for us, for our livelihood, for our food security, the agriculture and allied sector, and the forest and ecosystem. So these 2 are very important sectors which have various kinds of impacts. They are in form of decrease in soil fertility, crop productivity, the decrease in agriculture-related employment generation, basically because there is the variation in the precipitation, this impacts the agriculture cycle, and therefore there is also kind of distress migration which is possible. And this also affects the cattle and the other animal husbandry that is there. So the limitation of water which is there and the climate change, it has an impact. It is caused by our actions, and in turn it affects all of us as well. When we talk of the forest ecosystem, yes, there are deforestation and degradation, which is again a human activity, but then because of the soil erosion and otherwise also because of forest fires, etc., there is deforestation that happens, and then this leads to lower water retention, and soil erosion is because of the huge runoff of water, and decrease in non-timber forest products production, which impacts the livelihoods of people who are dependent on the forest producers, and then it ultimately also leads to the loss of biodiversity. So these, I've just put in here the impacts on these 2 important sectors, and these are basically we have called out, and it's from our projects which are undertaken through our National Adaptation Fund on Climate Change, but then it is all well established otherwise as well. Next please. Although the impact of climate change we have already discussed, everybody has talked about it, but through our ministry and through Government of India also, a lot of studies are being undertaken. Through our ministry, this long-term ecological observatory program is there, through which various studies have been undertaken. I have just listed out 8 activities over here, where we are trying to assess the drivers and implications of climate change, and also how regular climate change is, to ensure that there is a regular climate change assessment, and then if we can develop a decision support system and capacity building, how to deal with them. Apart from the ministry, various other ministries, including Ministry of Jal Shakti, Ministry of the Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Earth Sciences. So these are other agencies, ministries or agencies which are undertaking a lot of research, and we look forward to kind of all the results that come in on the impact of climate change. Next please. Coming back to the Indian water scenario, the Chairman's Central Water Commission has already kind of indicated and shown how the Indian water scenario is changing over the period of time. What the important thing that I want to bring out over here is that from almost 2000, middle of 2002, around 3, we are into a zone where we are into a water stress kind of situation. So if we are into the water stress kind of situation, and then the climate change also has a role in kind of bringing us to this situation, how do we deal with it? Next slide please. So as far as the India's climate action is concerned, we have the National Action Plan on Climate Change, the state which drives the India's climate action. Then all the states also have come up with their state action plan on climate change, and then we have a project which is National Adaptation Fund on Climate Change, through which we are supporting a lot of adaptation activities. In fact, in all the states, we have around 28 projects which are being run. Now, various actions that we take under the India's climate action, they are related to either mitigation or adaptation. When we are talking in terms of water, we are talking basically in terms of adaptation. So next slide please. And when we talk of adaptation, this is an important pillar for climate action with respect to water sector as well. And what we try to do here is we try to ensure that the action that is being taken through these adaptation activities, they protect people, they protect livelihoods, they ensure that ecosystems are restored. And then also, the NAPCC also provides for a range of policies and programs. Next slide please. The NAPCC is run through 8 missions. Among them, we have the National Water Mission, which is being steered by the Ministry of Jal Shakti. But there are other missions also, and especially I must mention here, National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture, and then the National Mission on Green India, National Mission on strengthening the Himalayan ecosystem. So these missions, even though they are very specific, different missions being driven by very different ministries, but they have also a very strong component which deals with water or the water security in their respective domains. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, that we have all the states who have developed their state action plan of climate change. We have given from our ministry a kind of guideline to come up with the SAPCC, and which is basically to align them with the NAPCC, the 8 missions that are there. The water mission is already there, but respective states have also undertaken, so just few slides. Respective states have also undertaken their own vulnerability studies, and I can show you here in the water sector, there are 34 SAPCC documents, and 30 have identified that water sector is an important sector, and all the SAPCCs are under revision because of the changes that have happened, the NDCs that India has updated, and also the life mission that Honorable Prime Minister has called for. So I'm sure in the next cycle we are going to have all the 34 states focusing on water. Next, please. When we look at the approaches to climate change resilient water infrastructure, most of the previous speakers have talked about it. So it is basically through the adaptation strategy, and on 2 sides, supply side, where we look at water conservation, including storage structures, catchment area treatment, etc. And on the demand side also, which is very important, where we could adopt climate smart agriculture, which ensures that there is less usage of water to get the same outputs. There could be crop diversification as well, and also irrigation efficiency, etc. But to undertake these adaptation activities, definitely the requisite finance, technology and knowledge transfer is very important. When we talk internationally, yes, we have been pitching for that, but also domestically, because most of our climate actions have been funded domestically. It is important that this aspect is also taken care of. Next, please. I would rather go very quickly through these 4-5 slides that I have, where we have put together various activities which could be undertaken, or interventions which could be undertaken in various sectors. So in agriculture and coastal sector, we can have climate resilient agriculture. I've listed out some of the interventions. We have coastal resource management, where one could get into rotational farming of shrimp, etc. Then we also have livestock management. Next, please. When talking about forest and ecosystem conservation interventions, we have forest conservation through an ecosystem approach, where increased tree cover for lower soil erosion during increased precipitation, and also increased plantation to improve regional microclimatic conditions. These kind of activities could be undertaken. And in ecosystem conservation, conservation of biodiverse ecosystems and water management, and various other allied activities could be undertaken. Next, please. Talking of energy interventions, well, when we talk of energy intervention in terms of adaptation, it may seem like whether it doesn't fit in here, but then water and energy security to farmers through various programs that are there of MNRE, like the PM Kusum, where solar grid connected agriculture farms are provided, or harnessing solar power for clean drinking water system, where various water systems, cleaning of water systems could be supported through the solar power. So this kind of has both the mitigation as well as the adaptation kind of potential. Next, please. In urban and waste management interventions, we are all aware there are various schemes that are being run. Amrut is one of them through the MoEFCC, and then water and health sanitation, WASH, through the Ministry of Health. So these are various interventions that could be there, which help kind of ensure that the adaptation to the water situation is appropriately addressed. Next, please. We have just, because we have been talking about breaking the silos, we have been talking about how do we all come together. So we have just tried to put together some of the key GoI initiatives. That doesn't mean to say that there are no more initiatives of the Government of India or initiatives at the state level. But then here is an assortment of various initiatives, a lot of them steered by the Ministry of Jal Shakti, but some of them through various other ministries, Amrut from MoHUA, PM Kusum from MNREG, the National Hydrology Project, etc. CDRI from Ministry of Home. In fact, it is NFCC from our ministry and CAMPA from our ministry. And the last one that I have mentioned here is the lifestyle for environment. And I think the call given by Honorable Prime Minister related to life, where he has exhorted not only the people of our country but across the world to kind of have a behavioral change, to see that we engage in not mindless consumption but very meaningful consumption. So this is a very, very important pillar which needs to be kind of taken forward as we are talking of water resilient infrastructure as well. Next slide, which is my last slide. So on 20th of October, Honorable Prime Minister launched this mission life at Kevadia, Ekta Nagar, and the core of the mission life that is there is about the circularity of the use of any resource, and here we are talking of water. And this circularity is also in terms of how it can really transform into a very, very effective policy intervention. So it is first through change in the demand patterns, through the nudge that could be there at the individual level, at the community level, which could lead to change in the supply patterns which are there, and then these two together can nudge to kind of evolve a policy which supports the circularity and the mission life. And the document that was brought out, it already has list of actions, around 75 of them, of which 15 are related to the water sector. So it's already built in there. So I think so as we move forward on various water interventions that we are taking up in the country, this aspect of mission life could also be really kept in mind. Thank you very much, sir.